Hi guys. First of all, thank you for attending this session. As you can see, we are here today to talk about accessibility with OutSystems. My name is Bruno Marcelino. I'm a front-end software engineer at OutSystems R&D. I'm part of the team that created Silk UI and OutSystems UI, recently released with O11. This is my contacts, and after these sessions, if you have any questions, feel free to contact me for more information. So, before to talk about accessibility, first we need to know what it is, where it came from. And accessibility comes from web accessibility. So we know that we all use the web in the daily basis. It's become part of how you can communicate, how we do business, shop, and learn. So my first question today is, do you know what is web? Web is for everyone. It's part of our everyday lives, and because it is universal. It is designed to work for all people, wherever they choose to access it, for mobile devices, or tools, or software, or language. When the web meets this goal, making an app accessible, we have a lot of people to access it, a diverse range of age, hearing, movement, or cognitive ability. So on the web, the impact is different because we can remove communication barriers and enable interaction between people. However, when applications or tools are badly designed, they can create more barriers. But what kind of barriers are we talking about? When I create an application without accessibility in mind, my content cannot be readable, cannot have the contrast ratio for all people. Some people can use the app, can see, but can't distinguish the colors on that. So if you are to create high-quality applications, that we don't exclude any people to use them. Developers and organizations have to consider accessibility. It is vital that our applications are accessible so that we can provide equal access and equal opportunities to all people. Everyone gains from this. The organizations that want to offer a service, or the people that want to wish to access to our resources. So, if you are not providing an accessible app, then your customers will be missing out their revenue, because part of the market, it will be excluded, same as people. Our customers and the digital world as a whole are increasingly concerned about this when designing and creating these apps. So, what is accessibility? With accessibility, all people can perceive, understand, navigate, and interact with your applications without any limitation. In other words, accessibility is building your tool or app so that it's available to as many people as possible. When we implement accessibility in our applications, we need to make sure that our apps describes the meaningful of our content, and all people can read our content, the screen readers, and the browsers. I will explain this in more detail further along, but let me share to you why is accessibility so important in nowadays. Let's take a moment and think about your friends and family. I'm sure most of us know someone that needs to wear glasses, and without them, they can't read or see much of anything at a distance. And any one of us can have an accident and be temporarily incapacitated. We are all surrounded by accessibility issues in nowadays, every day, and most of us even notice. There are a wide range of difficulties, and some are only minor, like your friend that used the glasses, but when we create applications with barriers, people like blind cannot see at all. So there are about 1.3 billion of people that have disabilities. This represents 1 in 5 people in the world. It's have problems with audition, vision, and I was surprised that when I learned this before my researching, because I also had no idea. We all think that disabilities only affect a small percentage of our population, but it's wrong, because almost 20% have a disability. As the world population ages, this number will increase. So it's time to all think seriously about this. Governments are concerned about this and are requiring more and more and more accessibility in our applications. So with accessibility, they can provide to their populations, especially in the educational and governmental applications. So there are already countries where it's illegal to have websites or portals isn't accessible. For example, in Norway. In Norway, if you are not compliant, you will fine about 15,000 euros per day. It's a lot of money. And when you implement accessibility, make your application accessible, you have a lot of benefits. We don't have any more discrimination. We have not complications with legal or with the law. We increase our positive image. We improve the usability for all users. But one of the things that it's really, really cool, it's the SEO. We provide, by default, a good SEO on our application because the search engines can read better our content. So now we have established that our applications needs to be accessible and we'll make it available for everyone, but we don't identify our target audience. Who really benefit with this? Usually, when I talk about accessibility with someone, the first answer that I heard is, never mind. Accessibility is not important. It's only for blind people. So it's wrong, because an accessible app must include all types of disabilities. We are talking about visual, auditory, cognitive, speech, and motor. This is the 5 categories, the most important. But in my opinion, I have other categories, because all of us can benefit with this, because accessibility benefits all of us. And we are all going at old, hopefully. And as we get older, our capacities change. My vision decreases, probably my voice. We can have a temporary disability. If I wear glasses and I lose them, I can't see much of anything. Or if I walk out of here and get hit by a bus, I never know. Imagine, I end up with breaking my arms, and it's really, really difficult to read our content. So, and we have the slow internet connection. Sometimes we have a low bandwidth connection to the internet, and we see our page loading and loading. And if this page it's only with images, we just see file names. We need to provide text alternatives. So I want to share to you a simple story that happened to me. Before to become a front-end developer, I work in a lot of places. I work on a contact center. I was a delivery guy. I work at the supermarket. But one of my jobs is a commercial guy. And like all the commercials, like to travel with less luggage possible. So we just have a laptop, a notebook to take notes, and a pencil. One day, I goes to a customer to sell the service that my company offers, and I just drop it, my laptop. It goes to the floor, and bam, it's broken. Some piece of plastic goes to space, I don't know. And the first thing that comes to my mind is my laptop needs to work. I just pick my laptop, open and press the button, and voila, it's all okay. It's good. My screen don't have any scratch, it's all okay. Goes to my login page in the Windows, and I put the most security password in the world, because I use a PIN code, and I use 12345. And it goes. It's all okay. I can access to my laptop, and I can go to my meeting. So I put my finger on the touchpad, and it doesn't work. when I drop my laptop to the floor, the touchpad, it's broken. So it's really hard to use a laptop only with a keyboard. But I can remember the shortcuts. I go to search bar of the Windows, type the Google Chrome, it opened, no problem. I can access to my company's website. I press the enter, no problem, it's all okay. I'm the best guy in the world because I can do anything with the keyboard. But one of the things of my website to access is my login account, to access to my files, to share with the customer. And I press the tab key, and nothing happened. I press a lot of times, and nothing happened. And like it goes to the footer, just this, and I can't really access to my content because my company's website don't have any accessibility. And I want to share this because in that moment, I don't use any glasses. I don't have any problems with my arms, but in that time, I have a temporary impairment. So, to make an app accessible, what we have? We have technologies, some helpers, but we have the UCAG. UCAG, it's a Web Content Accessibility Guidelines. And the other side, we have the development techniques, the HTML, semantic elements, and the Y area. But let's talk about the UCAG. The UCAG, it's a bunch of the guidelines that tells to our developers and help to make our content more accessible to achieve these guidelines. And these guidelines are based in 4 principles. We have the perceivable. We need to make our content perceivable to users, like providing text alternatives to images and non-text content. We make it operable. Our content in our application must be navigatable with the keyboard, only the keyboard. We need to make it understandable. Our content must be readable for anything, for any existing technology. And we need to make it robust. The device and browser compatibility in the existing technologies can be read. And these have a set of 78 guidelines that we need to follow. But it's divided in 3 levels. We have the level A, the AA, and the AAA. When we start a project, we always need to know the level of accessibility for the UX, UI, and developers, what need to follow to implement our accessibility. So this is just a few examples of guidelines. In the most of guidelines, we have the name and the summary, and sometimes the summary don't tell us anything. For example, the focus order. They say that we need to make a logical order, but how can we make it? So we need to go deeper, understand better the guideline, and implement. Now, you are probably asking, are there guidelines for mobile? Today, only have a small draft created by the UCAG, the version 2.1. They are working on this draft, and we only have best practices. But nowadays, with the guidelines that we have, we can implement it in mobile applications to make sure that our applications can be accessible. The basis, it's the same. Now, let's talk about the development techniques, HTML, semantics, and Y area. The semantics clearly describes its meaning to the browsers and screen readers. The area, we have the roles, the states, and properties. When we create an app accessible, the semantics and the area roles never change. But the states and properties, we can manipulate them to change visibilities for the screen readers, to make it open or closed. This is just states. When we combine these 2 things, we make our app accessible. With the semantics, I have here some of the most usual tags. We have the sides, like a sidebar, a figure, an header, and the headings. The headings, it's really, really important on accessible app because we need to tell him what is the title. For the area, it works like an extension of the HTML because on the HTML, we don't have a semantic called progress bar. We need to use a role. And the state, it's to change the visibility and the way we represent it for the screen readers. Let's take a look of this example. This example, it's not accessible. We have a button, because we can see this button, but we have a background black and a gray button. In the contrast ratio, we failed it. So let's put some color on it. And this is a button. It's a simple page. I want to click it because I don't have any impairment, and I can see there is a button. And when I click it, I changed my text color to the black. But when I go to more deeper in this example, I see that I use only a div, a non-semantic element, to call a button. And use a class to paint my button, use an ID, and a one-click event. But I need to make it accessible. To make it accessible, I can use the techniques. I will implement the area. I use the tab index 0 because when I press the tab, then we need to alert the browser that it needs to stop there. I need to tell that this div is a button, and we need to change the state and property area pressed because it's not a button. We need to implement it. Or we only use a semantic, and it will all work. Only what we need is the area pressed, and we need to manipulate them with JavaScript. So this is just a comparison with area and semantic. Using only area, we need to put a lot of code. Using only semantic, we have the same result. When we implement that in my simple page and I press the tab, I will see my outline, and I know that we need to click it. And when I click, I change my color, and I have a button accessible. So now we have all the context. I hope I haven't overloaded you with this information. However, it is important that we are all on the same page when we talk about accessibility and understanding. We know there is really no way to can justify ignoring accessibility issues any longer. So with that said, how does OutSystems deal with accessibility? And here is where the magic appears. With OutSystems UI, we created this UI framework to provide a default accessible in our patterns and templates. We are splitting into these two things, templates and patterns. But let's talk about templates. Because when we create an app, we need the template. So we have 1,000 of templates, layouts, and structures all over the world with all types or all kinds of content. But in all templates, we have 4 things in common. We have the header, navigation, main content, and the footer. And this is the most important things in our page. But probably you are asking why footer is here. Is because some applications we don't use the footer because it's the renegade of this 4. Sometimes we just forget them, but you need to make accessible. The header usually contains the app's logo, a search bar, a login information, and sometimes we put the navigation inside the header. We have the main content, and it's the dominant part of our template because all our content will display on that. And the footer commonly receives the application links, the socials, and so on. Most of templates are created like this example. We have a wrapper, and we have these 4 elements. And this is the same thing that to tell to our browser that is a bunch of pens or a bunch of chairs. because this tells anything. I just use a class to identify my element, and the browser and the screen readers don't interpret the classes. Just know there is a class and needs to paint my element. To pass this issue, we need to implement these two techniques again, HTML semantic and ARIA. And you can use only ARIA. The role that matches to header is a banner. For navigation, we have the specific role, and for the main, it's the same. And for the footer, we have the content info. But we need to make our device and browser compatibility. In my opinion, we need always to implement these two things, HTML and ARIA, always as possible. So in our templates, we provide a top menu and a side menu. And this is implemented by default. Providing an accessible template accelerates the development of accessible apps and saves the developer's time. Now we are entering in the UI patterns. We'll talk about all our patterns because it's a lot. I have 3 examples, a simple, a medium, and an advanced example. So let's talk about the progress bar. Progress bar, we provide this pattern with some behaviors, just a UI behaviors, to change the shape, the size, the orientation. But to make it accessible, we need to affect only one element, the bar. And to make it accessible, you just need to do that. We need to put a role called progress bar, and we need to tell to the browser, to the screen reader, or to the browser, the values. You need to tell him the value now, the mean, and the max. And when the screen reader stops to read this content, the person that we need to read it will know exactly what it is. And as you can see in the HTML structure, you only affect one element, just this div. Now we have the alert. The alert, only for accessibility, it's a simple pattern. But with OutSystems, we like to complicate a little more. So we provide a show close button. And when we provide this behavior, we need to make sure that we hide these from the screen readers. So what we need to do? On the wrapper, we need to set the role alert, and put ARIA hidden as a false. And this we will change when I click the button, and if this behavior is enabled. We want that our screen readers read the icons. The icons must be unreadable, so we need to hide from the existing technologies. So we put ARIA hidden on the icon at true. And the button, we use the same technique that I showed to you before. We set a role button, set a tab index, and change the ARIA hidden for true. And we put the ARIA label. And this ARIA label, it's what I want the screen reader needs to read. When you stop it, we don't read the icon, it just reads close alert. Okay? We have the ARIA hidden and true, but we will talk about this further along. This is the HTML structure. In this case, we affect more elements than the previous. And when we have the option enable the close button, we need to add some event listeners. We add the click, the focus, and the key down. So the click, it's normal. We just need to change this state. Change the hidden to true. Behind of our pattern, we put some classes and remove from the DOM. And on the close button, I change the ARIA hidden that is set at true to false. Because when I focus the alert, only in that moment I want to show the button. And we need to make it operable, because it's one of the principles of the UCAG. So we need to put some interaction with the keyboard. So to close the alert, I use the escape key. Now let's see the accordion. The accordion is a really complicated pattern because we have a lot of items. We can use an accordion probably with 10 or 20 items inside them. And one of the behaviors of our accordion is we can disable elements inside them. So inside them, if we have any disable element, we don't want to the screen reader read it. So what we do? In the elements that are not disabled, we make it hidden a false. And when it's hidden, we set it a true only. On the wrapper, we call the tab list. Why I put this role? With this role, when the screen reader stops to tell to the user what component is, we will tell to the user that is the number of the elements on this pattern. And we put a role tab on the other elements. We set the tab index as the previous patterns. So in the content, we put a tab panel to relate the tab with the tab panel and relate the content. And we need to make it accessible only for a tab index. To just put him on a 0. And we need to affect the expand and collapse of the item. When it's open, we need to put an area expanded a true. When it's closed, you need to put him on a false. And again, we use the same technique. I use a div to control my pattern. I set a role button, and in this case, I need to relate the title with the content. And I use the area controls to relate to the content, and I use the area labeled by to the title. When I stop on the content, the user will know the context. As you can see, the HTML structure, it's quite different. I don't put all the things in here because it's only just HTML and repetitions of areas. It's just to see the area in one element. Again, we need to make it operable. And in this particular case, in the accordion, we don't have specific keys to open and close. We use an enter in the space to open and close the pattern. But we use escape again to close it. This is one of our internal guidelines. All the patterns that need to keyboard interaction, to close, we always use the escape. To open, we use always the enter and the space button. So with this, with OutSystems UI, you can have accessibility by default. But don't forget one thing. We can't have our content fully accessible without the intervention of a developer. Always a developer needs to make anything in an accessible app. This is just accelerators and remove some time of our developers. So, say that, how can we make it accessible using OutSystems? So, we have a lot of things. I know when you are creating an app, you need to sometimes create custom patterns, to create animations, for example. So, one of the animations, we can use only a display none and the display block. But I want the vision of our pattern, it's only this. It's not a smooth animation. It's a flick on our screen. So we want a smooth animation to all users for a good UI. So we put the opacity 0 to 1. And it's all okay. The final result is this. But for the screen reader, we have a problem. Because when he uses the display none, he hides from the screen reader. And we put the display block, he can read it. With opacity, it's different. He can access to the element. And using this, we have this problem, the keyboard trap. We failed in this guideline. So to solve this smooth animation, a good UI, good presence in our screen, just need one thing, one CSS rule, visibility. And we can change the hidden to visible. You also can use the JavaScript You can provide ARIA hidden and true and false, but it's more work for you. So with CSS, you can solve this problem. Now we have the images. I know when you are creating an app, most of the cases you never set the alt or the title for the images, and you are fail in this, in text alternatives. And to set that, to make it accessible, you just need to set the label property on your Service Studio. Only select the image and type the label. And this is the final result. On the render, I have the alt and the title. Now we have the outline. And the outline, the most of style guides, it's one of the resets. Some of the developers using this. We remove the outline, and we can't do it. Because doing this, we failed these guidelines. We make focus invisible and keyboard traps, like on my story. And I pressed the tab, I didn't see anything in my screen. So we have some tips and tricks. You can put it a 0, and we pass the guideline, but it's not accessible. Okay? But you can pass the guideline. So what I say is, provide always an alternative styling. You can put a background color. You can change the color. You can put some line, thin, and dotted. And this, it's better for the developer. Or you can make one workaround. You can disable it by a 0, as I told before, and you just need to put these classes on the body. And when I press the tab, it removes the classes, and it's all accessible. Now we will enter the most important part in our OutSystems, the containers and the placeholders. And why I say that? Because we can convert a simple container and a simple placeholder in another thing. We can generate a HTML tags around the elements using only a container or a placeholder, just using the OS tag name. For example, to create headings, we can do this with OS tag name, or to convert a container in a paragraph. It's really cool. But we can put some complexity in this. If I want to create a section and I make it fully accessible, I use the OS tag name and the role, the ARIA role, to make it accessible. Or, like our patterns, more complex. We use classes, we use variables to control our visibilities, or the accordion, it's the same thing. So containers and placeholders, it's really powerful for accessibility in OutSystems. Say that one of the features that we delivered with O11, it's the screen template. And the screen templates, we need to put some accessibility on that. So let's see this example. We have a sidebar with the filters, categories, filter by price, and I have my products on the center. Let's focus on the sidebar. On the sidebar, I have a container, a wrapper, with a cart. I have a category that I will filter by a category, and I have one element that is to filter by price. To make it fully accessible, I need to do that. On the container, I need to convert him to a sidebar. I just need to use OS tag name site and set the role complementary. And the containers that surround the categories, I will set the tab index 0 to tell to the screen reader that needs to stop that and read it. And I set the ARIA label, because if I don't use the ARIA label, it will read all the content. It will read for the people with the impairment. It will read all, audio 6, and it's complicated to interpret them because don't have any context. You don't know what it is. So using the area label. And for the price, it's the same thing. So for the element, we use an expression and a badge. And this is a custom pattern that I created. I created a custom pattern, and I need to put some accessibility. So I put it in the container, and I set the tab index and set the roll button. And when I press the tab, I will navigate. I will navigate to the filter by category. I will know there is an all, and I press the tab. I will stop to the audio, and when I press the enter, it will do something. On the price, we have the range slider. It's our UI component, and you don't need to do anything because we provide the default accessibility on this pattern. Now, let's see the product. Because it's a product that becomes from a database, we just need to do this one time. So we have a container with an image, two blocks of text, and a button. To make it accessible, first we go to the wrapper and give a name. To the image, I set the label property. And to the button, I just only set the tab index and relate it to the wrapper. And when the screen reader will read this container, it will read the image, the title, the price, and says that is add to cart button. So with all these improvements on this screen template, we achieve all these guidelines. And I just took 10 minutes to make it accessible. So when we implement accessibility, or when we are creating applications to make it accessible, we need to change our mindset, always. Because when you are creating, you always ask to you, it is readable? The guy next to me, when have this application, know what it is? The screen reader can access to my content? Because accessibility enables people to access to our applications without any limitations. And with accessibility, we contribute to building a better society. Thank you.
Thank you, Bruno. Thank you, guys. So before the break, we have some time for questions. So if you have any, just please raise your hand. No questions?
One off there.
Questions?
Two.
Okay.
Working for a public sector company.
Public sector?
Yeah. So
Okay.
we have to fulfill all the guidelines as of 2 years by law.
Yes.
We use OutSystems for our mobile apps, but
Yes.
everything starts off as a web container. And so the first thing that screen reader sees is this wrapper, and it always reads out that. So every single screen we have to manage the first focusable element. What is the roadmap for OutSystems to handle that natively straight out of the box rather than having to adapt
Yes.
all the templates?
Okay. You are asking if we will provide accessibility for mobile. Yes. For now, we don't have any accessibility for mobile in mobile runtime. Okay. It's one of the things that we need to implement. It's in our roadmap. But when you create a web app and you run it on a mobile, you can have access and read all your content. For example, this screen reader is readable with the voiceover of the iPad, and you can access to all content and know all the things in the patterns. But we don't have any guidelines for mobile. We just have best practices. And the guidelines, it's a draft that the UK are working. So we need to wait, and after that, we will implement on OutSystems.
There was another question? It was the same one?
It's the
Okay.
same one.
Okay. Is there anyone else with a question for Bruno? Yeah, we do.
Just a curiosity.
Yes.
You always use tab index 0.
Yes.
It's because your components are to be reused or something like that? Or
If you
what's
want-
the reason?
If you want to stop for your screen reader to read your content, you need to use a tab index. On OutSystems, you have an incremental tab index auto-generated, okay? And we need to set him to 0 to make a DOM order. The DOM order, it's the most important thing is on accessibility, to can navigate, making a consistent navigation, a meaningful sequence.
Enjoy, and thank you.
Thank you.